The proximity alarms were screaming again, which meant either Jake had spilled coffee on the sensor array or they'd found something that wasn't supposed to be floating around in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Dr. Elena Vasquez really hoped it was the coffee. "Please tell me you didn't break my expensive equipment with your caffeine addiction," she called out, not bothering to look up from her spectral analysis readings. The research vessel Meridian hummed around them, its fusion drives maintaining a steady orbit around asteroid 2087 Kepler while her team conducted what was supposed to be a routine mineral survey. "Hey, I resent that accusation," Jake Morrison's voice crackled through the comm system from the engineering bay. "My coffee hasn't broken anything in at least 3 days. Besides, you're gonna want to see this." Elena sighed and pushed herself away from her workstation, the artificial gravity generator creating that familiar slight tug as she moved through the ship's corridors. After 18 months aboard Meridian, she'd grown accustomed to the way the walls curved slightly, following the ship's cylindrical design, and how the blue-white LED strips cast everything in a clinical glow that made everyone look vaguely ill. The bridge was cramped, barely large enough for the 3-person crew, with Jake hunched over the sensor console while their pilot, Commander Lisa Park, manipulated the holographic display floating above the navigation table. Elena had worked with both of them on previous deep space surveys, and she'd learned to trust Jake's engineering instincts, even if his sense of humor left something to be desired. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing at a cluster of red dots on the three-dimensional scan. "We've got a metallic signature about 2 clicks out, but it's not moving in a standard orbital pattern. And the spectral analysis is all wrong for any known asteroid composition." Elena leaned over his shoulder, studying the readouts. The signature was definitely artificial, roughly 60 meters in length, and emitting a faint energy signature that their sensors couldn't quite classify. More importantly, it was slowly tumbling end over end in a way that suggested either a disabled propulsion system or complete power failure. "Could be space junk," Lisa suggested, though her tone indicated she didn't believe it. "Maybe some old probe that went off course." "Space junk doesn't typically emit quantum field fluctuations," Elena replied, watching the energy reading spike and fall in irregular patterns. "And look at these thermal signatures. Whatever this thing is, it's still warm." Jake pulled up a visual feed from their external cameras, and Elena felt her breath catch. The object rotating slowly in the vacuum wasn't any human-made vessel she'd ever seen. It was organic in appearance, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in motion, and its surface shimmered with an iridescent quality that reminded her of oil on water. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed weakly along its hull, fading in and out like a dying heartbeat. "Well," Jake said after a moment of stunned silence, "that's definitely not in the operations manual." Elena was already moving toward the equipment lockers, her scientific curiosity overriding any sense of caution. "Lisa, bring us in for a closer look. Jake, prep the boarding pod and get the atmospheric analysis ready. We need to know if that thing is emitting anything toxic. Are we seriously about to board an unidentified alien vessel?" Lisa asked, though she was already adjusting their trajectory. "Because I feel like there should be protocols for this sort of thing." "There probably are," Elena replied, pulling on her environmental suit. "But they're filed somewhere back on Earth under things we never expected to actually need. Besides, if that ship is dying, there might be someone aboard who needs help." The boarding process took nearly an hour, with Jake running every scan he could think of while Elena reviewed the first contact protocols she'd memorized back in graduate school but never expected to use. The alien vessel's hull was warm to the touch, and their sensors detected a breathable atmosphere inside, though the oxygen levels were dropping steadily. The airlock interface was surprisingly intuitive, responding to touch in a way that suggested either remarkable coincidence or sophisticated adaptive technology. As the outer door cycled open, Elena found herself staring down a corridor that seemed to pulse with its own internal light, the walls covered in patterns that shifted and flowed like living circuitry. "Elena, you getting this?" Jake's voice in her earpiece was tight with excitement. "The bio readings are off the charts. This whole ship is alive somehow, but it's dying." She moved deeper into the vessel, following the strongest life signs toward what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. The air was thin but breathable, carrying a faint scent like ozone and rain. As she rounded a corner, Elena stopped short. A woman lay motionless on what appeared to be a bed that had grown from the ship's floor, her skin pale as moonlight and her breathing shallow. She looked perfectly human except for her ears, which were elongated and delicately pointed, rising gracefully from the sides of her head. Her hair was white as starlight, spread across the organic pillow, and her features held an ethereal beauty that seemed almost too perfect to be real. "Jake, I've found someone," Elena whispered into her calm. "She's alive, but barely. The ship's life support is failing." Elena approached slowly, her medical scanner indicating severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. The woman's bio-readings were similar to human baseline but with subtle differences that suggested an evolutionary path that had diverged long ago. Without thinking, Elena reached for her emergency water supply, a simple plastic bottle that seemed absurdly mundane in the alien chamber. The woman's eyes opened as Elena knelt beside her, revealing irises of the deepest violet Elena had ever seen. They were aware, intelligent, and filled with something that might have been hope. Elena held the bottle to the woman's lips, and she drank deeply, never breaking eye contact. As the woman's strength returned with startling rapidity, she spoke in a voice like wind chimes, "You have given me water from your own hand." Elena smiled, relieved that her universal translator was working. "You were dying. Anyone would have done the same." The woman's expression grew serious, almost reverent. "No," she said softly, "you do not understand. In my culture, to accept water from another's hand is to accept their soul as bound to yours. I am Lyralii of the Aquari. And now, Elena Vasquez, I am yours, as you are mine." Elena blinked, the weight of those words settling over her like a lead blanket. Somewhere in her earpiece, she could hear Jake laughing hysterically. Elena stared at the alien woman who had just casually announced their eternal bond while Jake's laughter echoed through her calm like a soundtrack to the most surreal moment of her life. Lyralii sat up with fluid grace, her recovery so rapid it defied every medical principle Elena knew, and the ship around them began to glow brighter, as if responding to its occupants' renewed vitality. "Jake, this really isn't the time for hysterics," Elena muttered, though she had to admit the situation had a certain comedic absurdity to it. She'd gone from xenobiologist to accidentally married in the span of 5 minutes, which had to be some kind of record. Sorry, Jake gasped between chuckles. "It's just that you literally have the worst luck with dating. Remember that guy from the Mars station who turned out to be married to 3 different people? At least this time you only accidentally proposed to one alien princess." "Princess?" Elena turned back to Lyralii, who was now standing and examining her surroundings with the kind of practiced assessment that spoke of military training. "You're a princess." Lyralii's pointed ears twitched slightly, which Elena was beginning to suspect might be the Aquari equivalent of a shrug. "Crown princess, actually. Heir to the Aquari Dominion, which spans 47 star systems and approximately 12 billion souls." She paused, tilting her head as she studied Elena's expression. "Is this what humans call a problem?" Lisa's voice crackled through the calm from the meridian. "Elena, I'm reading massive energy spikes from that ship. Whatever you did in there, it's coming back online." Indeed, the bioluminescent patterns along the walls were pulsing with increasing intensity, and Elena could feel a subtle vibration through the deck plating as systems throughout the vessel began to awaken. Lyralii placed her palm against the nearest wall, and the organic surface rippled in response, information flowing between ship and occupant in a way that made Elena's translator struggle to keep up. "My ship tells me that rebel forces damaged her quantum drives while I was en route to the Vegan Confederation Peace Summit," Lyralii explained, her violet eyes taking on an almost luminous quality as she interfaced with her vessel. "They sought to prevent the treaty signing, believing that war would be more profitable than peace. Unfortunately for them, my ship has remarkable regenerative capabilities when properly nourished." "Nourished?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The water you gave me contained trace minerals that are extremely rare in this star system but essential for our biotechnology. Your simple act of kindness not only saved my life but allowed my ship to begin repairs. Lyralii smiled, and Elena noticed that her canine teeth were slightly more pronounced than human normal. In many ways, you have saved both of us. Jake's voice interrupted their conversation with barely contained excitement. Elena, you need to get back here right now. We've got company, and I don't think they're here for a social visit. Through the viewport, Elena could see 3 sleek vessels approaching, their hulls a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with predatory grace, their weapon ports already glowing with accumulated energy. The rebels, Lyralii said, her expression hardening. They must have followed my quantum signature when the ship began to regenerate. She turned to Elena with an intensity that was both beautiful and terrifying. I must ask a great favor of you, my water-bonded. Will you help me reach your vessel? My ship is still too damaged to engage in combat, but perhaps we can outrun them. Elena was already moving toward the airlock, her mind racing through the tactical implications. Jake, prep the engines for emergency burn. Lisa, plot a course for the nearest comm relay. We need to get word back to Earth that we've made first contact. First contact that ended in an accidental wedding, Jake added helpfully. The diplomats are going to love this. The transfer to the Meridian took precious minutes they didn't have, with the rebel ships closing distance rapidly. As soon as Lyralii was aboard, Elena sealed the airlocks and gave Lisa the signal to run. The fusion engines roared to life, pushing them away from the asteroid field at maximum acceleration. Those ships are faster than us, Lisa reported, her knuckles white on the control yokes. They'll overtake us in about 10 minutes. Lyralii moved to the sensor station with the easy familiarity of someone accustomed to starship operations, her long fingers dancing over controls that weren't designed for her species but which she seemed to understand intuitively. May I? She asked, though she was already interfacing with their systems. By all means, Elena replied. Any help would be appreciated. What happened next defied Elena's understanding of physics. Lyralii's touch seemed to awaken something in the Meridian's systems, optimizing power distribution and engine efficiency in ways that made their fusion drives sing with newfound harmony. Their acceleration increased dramatically, and Elena watched their pursuers begin to fall behind. How did you do that? Jake asked, his engineer's curiosity overriding his amazement. Your technology is primitive but elegant, Lyralii replied with no trace of condescension. The principles are similar to ours, simply less refined. I merely suggested some improvements to your energy flow patterns. She suggested improvements, Jake repeated to Elena. I think I'm in love with her engineering philosophy. Get in line, Elena muttered, then realized what she'd said and felt her cheeks burn. I mean, that is, I didn't mean. Lyralii's laughter was like silver bells, and Elena noticed that when she was amused, her ears tilted forward slightly. The water bond does not require romantic love, though it often develops over time. We are connected now in ways that transcend mere emotional attachment. You will find that distance becomes difficult, separation painful, and the urge to protect each other nearly overwhelming. Great, Elena said weakly. That's not going to complicate things at all. Elena, Lisa called from the pilot station, her voice tight with concern. I'm reading multiple quantum signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Big ones. The view screen filled with ships, but these weren't the sleek predators that had been chasing them. These vessels were massive, their hulls crystalline and organic, like living jewels that caught and refracted starlight into rainbow patterns. They moved with ponderous grace, and Elena counted at least 20 of them before giving up. The Imperial fleet, Lyralii said quietly. My father has come looking for me. Jake cleared his throat. Elena, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm pretty sure we just went from first contact to meeting the in-laws in record time. The Emperor will want to meet you, Lyralii continued, her expression unreadable. He will need to determine if my water bonded is worthy of joining the royal family. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Royal family? I'm just a xenobiologist. I study space algae for a living. Space algae is very important, Lyralii assured her solemnly. My father respects those who seek knowledge of living things. I don't think that's going to help much when I have to explain to the emperor of a 47-system empire that I accidentally married his daughter by giving her a drink of water, Elena replied, sinking into her chair as the implications of her situation finally began to sink in. The largest of the crystalline ships was approaching, and Elena could see docking bays opening like flower petals along its hull. There was no going back now. The Aquari Imperial flagship was unlike anything Elena had imagined. As their shuttle glided through the docking bay, she realized they were flying inside what amounted to a living organism the size of a city. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with microscopic organisms that created patterns of light around moving objects. Try not to gawk, Jake whispered as they disembarked. You're supposed to be royalty now. I'm supposed to be collecting mineral samples, Elena hissed back. This morning my biggest worry was whether we had enough coffee to last the trip home. Lyralii moved ahead of them with the fluid grace of someone who had grown up in artificial gravity, her white hair streaming behind her like liquid starlight. The Aquari crew members they passed all performed the same gesture, pressing their palm to their forehead and then extending it toward her, which she acknowledged with subtle nods. That's the greeting of respect, she explained over her shoulder. When you meet my father, simply place your hand over your heart and bow slightly. Don't attempt the traditional greeting unless you want to accidentally declare war on someone. There's a greeting that declares war? Elena asked, horrified. Several, actually. Aquari diplomacy is quite complex. The throne room, if that's what it was, defied every human architectural principle Elena knew. The space seemed to extend infinitely in all directions, with no discernible walls or ceiling, just endless flows of living light that formed and dissolved like aurora patterns. At the center sat a figure that could only be Lyralii's father, though he appeared to be crafted from the same crystalline material as his ship. Emperor Theralis was tall even by Aquari standards, his pointed ears adorned with what appeared to be living jewelry that crawled slowly around the delicate cartilage. His eyes were the same violet as his daughter's, but ancient and penetrating in a way that made Elena feel as though he was reading her genetic code just by looking at her. So, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that Elena felt in her bones, this is the human who has water bonded with my daughter. Elena placed her hand over her heart and bowed, grateful that she didn't immediately trigger an interstellar incident. Your Imperial Majesty, I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I need to clarify that the bonding was entirely accidental. The Emperor's eyebrows rose, which on him looked like twin lightning bolts arcing across his forehead. Accidental? Child, there are no accidents in the flow of water. The universe guided your hand to save my daughter's life, just as it guided her to accept your offering. Do you think the cosmic forces care about your intentions? Dad, Lyralii interjected, and Elena was oddly comforted to know that even alien princesses had to deal with difficult parents. She's from a species that doesn't understand our customs. She acted from pure compassion. Which is exactly why the bonding is valid, Theralis replied, rising from his throne with movements that seemed to bend space around him. However, tradition demands that I test her worthiness to join our bloodline. She must complete the 3 trials of unity. Jake, who had been trying to make himself invisible behind a pillar of living light, chose that moment to clear his throat. Excuse me, Your Majesty, but what exactly do these trials involve? Because Elena here once got lost in a shopping mall for 4 hours, so if there's any navigation involved. Jake! Elena whispered furiously. The Emperor actually smiled, an expression that transformed his austere features into something almost grandfatherly. Your companion speaks with the honesty of deep friendship. This is good. The trials are not of physical prowess, human child, but of understanding. First, you must demonstrate your ability to commune with the deep currents that flow between all living things. He gestured, and the floor beneath Elena's feet became transparent, revealing what appeared to be an ocean of liquid light stretching into infinity. Place your hands in the flow and listen to what it tells you. Elena knelt and tentatively touched the surface. Immediately, her mind was flooded with sensation, not thoughts exactly, but impressions and emotions from countless beings across the galaxy. She could feel Lyraliai's presence like a warm current, and Jake's worried affection like a steady pulse. But there was something else, a vast network of consciousness that connected every Aquari vessel, every world they inhabited, every drop of water in their territory. I can feel them all, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Every ship, every person. They're all connected. The second trial, Viralis announced as Elena withdrew her hands, requires you to demonstrate wisdom in leadership. You must navigate the maze of consequences. The throne room shifted around them, walls of light forming a complex three-dimensional puzzle that extended both above and below their position. Holographic scenarios played out in each chamber, showing different diplomatic situations, resource conflicts, and ethical dilemmas. Each choice you make will affect the others, the Emperor explained. Find the path that brings the greatest harmony to all. Elena studied the maze, her scientific mind automatically cataloging the variables and relationships. But then she noticed Jake in her peripheral vision, making faces at one of the holographic diplomats, and she started laughing. What amuses you, child? Viralis asked. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but this is exactly like the resource allocation problems we solve on deep space missions. You can't optimize for everyone's maximum benefit, so you optimize for everyone's minimum acceptable outcome. She began moving through the maze, choosing solutions that weren't perfect for anyone but were livable for everyone. The maze dissolved as she reached the center, and the Emperor nodded approvingly. Wisdom indeed. The third trial is the most difficult, for it requires you to sacrifice something precious for the good of another. The room around them transformed into a perfect replica of the Meridian's laboratory, complete with Elena's research data and specimens. You may keep your human life and return to your work, or you may accept transformation into a hybrid form that can survive in our environments but will forever change what you are. Choose quickly, for Lyraliai's life depends on your decision. Elena looked at the research that had been her life's work, then at Lyraliai, whose violet eyes held no expectation, only acceptance of whatever choice Elena made. Jake was frantically making, "don't do it," gestures behind the Emperor's back, which somehow made the decision easier. Will the transformation hurt her? She asked Viralis. Physical pain is temporary. The loss of one's birth identity is forever. Elena walked to Lyraliai and took her hands. I've spent my whole life studying how life adapts and evolves. Maybe it's time to do some first-hand research. Elena, no. Jake protested. Think about this rationally. I am thinking rationally, Elena replied. I'm also thinking about the fact that I've never felt as connected to another being as I do right now. The water bond isn't just a cultural ritual, Jake. It's real, and it's changing both of us. The Emperor placed a crystalline hand on Elena's shoulder, and she felt warmth spread through her body like liquid starlight. The transformation has already begun, child. It started the moment you chose compassion over caution. We are simply making it official. As the change took hold, Elena felt her consciousness expanding, her senses reaching out to touch the vast network of Aquari minds. She was still herself, but also something more, something that could exist both in the deep ocean worlds of the Dominion and the research stations of human space. Well, Jake said finally, I guess this means you'll need to update your LinkedIn profile. 3 months after what the media had dubbed the water wedding incident, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned hybrid vessel Deep Current, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot in the viewports. Her reflection showed the changes, her ears now carried the elegant points of the Aquari, and her eyes held flecks of violet that sparkled when she accessed the quantum communication network that connected her to Aquari space. Still having second thoughts? Jake asked, joining her at the viewport. He'd insisted on coming along as chief engineer, claiming that someone needed to keep her grounded now that she was technically alien royalty. About which part? Elena replied, flexing her fingers and watching the bioluminescent patterns that now flowed beneath her skin respond to her emotions. The part where I accidentally married into an interstellar empire, or the part where I volunteered to become humanity's first hybrid ambassador? I was thinking more about the part where you agreed to spend the next 5 years exploring uncharted star systems with your wife and her overprotective father, Jake said. Because I have to tell you, family dinners are going to be weird enough without adding 47 star systems worth of in-laws. Lyralii appeared beside them with the silent grace that Elena was still getting used to, her presence immediately warming the quantum bond they now shared. The Emperor sends his regards and asks me to remind you that the Vegan Confederation is still waiting for their peace treaty. Apparently, preventing an interstellar war is considered good practice for newlyweds. No pressure there, Elena muttered, though she was smiling. The transformation had enhanced her cognitive abilities along with her physical ones, and she found herself processing diplomatic complexities with the same ease she'd once reserved for spectral analysis. At least we know the rebels won't be a problem anymore. The rebel fleet had surrendered immediately upon learning that their target had not only survived but had bonded with a species capable of crossing interstellar distances in ships they barely understood. Emperor Thyralis had been remarkably generous in his punishment, sentencing them to 5 years of community service helping to establish the new Humaniquary Cultural Exchange Program. Lisa sends her congratulations, by the way, Jake added, pulling up a holographic message from their former pilot. She's apparently been promoted to head of the new Xenocontact Protocols Division. Something about having invaluable experience with first contact situations that go completely off the rails. Elena laughed, the sound now carrying harmonic frequencies that made the ship's bioneural networks hum in sympathy. I should probably feel guilty about turning a simple mineral survey into a diplomatic crisis. A diplomatic crisis that ended with humanity gaining access to advanced biotechnology, membership in an interstellar alliance, and the galaxy's most extensive star charts, Lyralii pointed out. I think your species will forgive you. The deep current was itself a marvel of hybrid technology, built using both human engineering principles and Aquari bioconstruction techniques. The result was a vessel that could think and adapt, its living hull responding to dangers and opportunities with the wisdom of both species. Elena had spent weeks learning to interface with the ship's consciousness, marveling at how it seemed to anticipate their needs. Incoming transmission from Earth, the ship announced in a voice that sounded like wind over water. It's marked as personal priority. Elena's former mentor, Professor Sarah Kim, appeared in the holographic display, her expression caught between pride and exasperation. Elena, I just finished reading your preliminary report on Aquari biotechnology, and I have one question. How did someone who used to get lost in the university library end up revolutionizing xenobiology? Dumb luck and good hydration habits, Elena replied, grinning at Jake's snort of laughter. How are the research applications coming along? We've got 17 universities fighting over who gets to host the first Humaniquary joint research facility, and the medical applications alone are going to keep us busy for decades. The regenerative properties of Aquari biotech could eliminate most degenerative diseases. Sarah's expression grew more serious. I'm proud of you, Elena. You've opened doors we never knew existed. After the transmission ended, Elena found herself reflecting on how much had changed. The frightened xenobiologist who had panicked at the thought of meeting alien in-laws had been replaced by someone who could navigate quantum communication networks and translate between species with fundamentally different ways of understanding reality. The Helix Nebula expedition is requesting our assistance, Lyralii announced, reviewing the ship's incoming messages. There's a species there that communicates through bioluminescent patterns, and they think our combined expertise might help establish contact. More first contact situations? Jake asked. Are we sure Elena's luck can handle it? My luck got me the most amazing wife in 47 star systems, Elena replied, taking Lyralii's hand and feeling the quantum bond pulse with shared affection. I'm willing to trust it a little longer. The ship began to turn toward open space, its bioneural networks plotting a course for regions of the galaxy that no human had ever seen. Elena watched the stars whirl past, each one a potential discovery, a new form of life to understand, a fresh challenge to overcome. You know, she said thoughtfully, when I was a kid, I used to dream about finding life among the stars. I just never imagined it would involve accidentally getting married in the process. Lyreliai's laugh was like music. In Aquari philosophy, we believe that water finds its own level, flowing where it needs to go regardless of the obstacles in its path. Perhaps your destiny was always to be here, among the stars, bridging the gap between worlds. That's very poetic, Jake said, but can we maybe avoid any more accidental marriage rituals? I'm running out of jokes about Elena's dating life. I make no promises, Elena replied, watching the stars grow brighter as they left the solar system behind. But I can guarantee it'll be an interesting trip. The deep current leaped into hyperspace, carrying its hybrid crew toward adventures that would reshape both species' understanding of what it meant to be alive in a universe full of infinite possibilities. And somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist, accidental princess, and bridge between worlds, smiled at the knowledge that the best discoveries always began with a simple act of kindness.